Hi, I'm Stephanie and this is my home, the 16th century Chateau de Lalande. Lalande was owned for hundreds of years by a family of marquises who were at the heart of French royal life. One of them even had the honour of being sent by King Louis XV to greet Marie Antoinette on her arrival in France. But, far from being a stuffy museum, this chateau is a living home. I live here all the time and am regularly joined by my mother, my family, my friends, and wonderful volunteers from all over the world who help me to lovingly restore this historic home. Welcome to Lalande, a chateau filled with life, love, and laughter. Hello and welcome to Sundays at the Chateau here at the Chateau de Lalande, where today I would like to talk about the story so far, because we've had a huge milestone moment this week. The Chateau Diaries Patreon account has officially become one of the top 1,000 Patreon accounts on the planet, which is just unbelievable. It's only 4 months old and it's completely transformed our lives in an incredibly short space of time. But I thought, rather than looking forward at all of the things that we're going to be able to do because of it, it might be really nice to take a little moment to pause and just see how far we've come, because many of you have started watching this during lockdown, and even those of you who've been watching the vlog for the full 2 years that I've been creating it won't have seen what life was like at Lalande when we first moved in, and oh my goodness, it was very different from the way it is now. But I thought it might be quite fun to actually delve into that side of things and really show you these before photos of what happened and what life was like here during the renovations. So now we're going to go back in time to the day that Nicholas and I flew out with my mother and with Michael to sign for the chateau. And the Marquis de Nadillac, the man whom we'd bought the chateau from, gave us a tour of all of the rooms, and here are some of the photos from that tour. So they show you what the chateau was like when we bought it from the previous owners. As you can see, the lake was still there, so it's wonderful to look back on these photos and to remember how lovely it was to see the water just at the end of the lawn. It was actually in rather a good state. I mean, all of the plumbing, all of the electrics needed doing, the bathrooms needed redoing, but the fabric of the building was very sound. The roof is good at Lalande, which is very important, and it was kept in a fairly tidy way. This is the Marquis showing us around on that very first day, and it brings back happy but quite scary memories. It's funny to look back and see the bedrooms as they were then. This is Bonne Maman. This is La Chambre Rose with its original pink wallpaper that it was named after. Here's the Chambre Perse. Lots of the rooms had lots of beds in them because they were such a huge family. Some of them even had bunk beds in. This is now the Chambre de la Chapelle. So they handed over a chateau in a good state to us, but we knew that it couldn't stay in that state. It was going to need a lot of work to make it truly beautiful and livable in the 21st century. Looking at these photos, you'll see that some parts of the chateau are barely recognisable. The Grand Salon looks completely different from the way that it is now because it was actually split into 3 rooms. One was what they used as the Grand Salon. You can see that photo here. It was a very pretty room. It just had one double door opening out onto the terrace and had a lovely piano and fabric covered walls and a lovely parquet floor. And then the first part of the Grand Salon, which is now all part of the same room, was split into a large area of corridor, like a little hallway, and a laundry room. And the laundry room also had beautiful double doors opening onto the main terrace. So it made no sense. After our visit that day, Nicholas, I have to say, was pretty frightened, though quite excited as well. We couldn't move straight in because the Nadillacs wanted to use the chateau one last time that summer. So they asked us if we could exchange the final contracts in October. So in October 2005, I arrived with Nicholas and my father and Michael. Mummy joined us a little bit later. It was quite overwhelming. I remember that first night as I was lying down in a bed, well, whose mattress felt as though several people had probably died in it over centuries. Quite lumpen, and I was sinking into it. And I was lying there just thinking, what have we done and how are we going to start? What do we tackle first? when there was a knock on my door and Nicholas came in. He went, Steph, do you think you could just come to my room for a sec, help me out? There's a situation with a bat. And there was a bat just flying around his room like crazy. And Nick had just arrived from London. This was not what he was used to dealing with. So the two of us on our first night at Lalande were flapping our arms around his bedroom, trying to get the bat to go out of the window. It was quite overwhelming. It was just my father and Nick and me, the three of us, in this huge chateau that we didn't know, that we were still learning about and still discovering, with no idea of what to tackle first and of how we should transform the place. But I didn't want to rush into anything. We did not have infinite funds. We couldn't afford to make mistakes and redo things over and over again. And I'd never done anything like this before, and I'd never decorated a home like this. So I decided that we should just spend 1 year living here and just see how we use the house. Do we stay in the bedrooms that we think we're going to stay in? Do we find that actually we prefer the other wing of the house and we find ourselves more drawn to that? When you move into a chateau with about 40 rooms in total, you don't quite know how you're going to be using it. So for 1 year, we just lived in the chateau, we just experienced it, and we saw how the light moved around the building, which rooms were more pleasant at which times of the day. But that first year wasn't wasted. It is important to live in a house and to see how you feel about it before tackling major works, but there's other things that you can get on with. And in my case, I knew that I needed to educate myself in interior design. I bought a lot of beautiful interior design books, and I would just sit and look at the pictures, because I decided that staring at beauty would make me subconsciously start to understand how things work together, how they were put together, how great designers were able to achieve the results that they did. But I had to soak it up first. I also realized that I would have to teach myself how to do a lot of the decorative things that we needed to do, because we couldn't employ interior designers or decorators to do the works here. We needed to spend all our money on the skills that we couldn't do, like the electrics and the plumbing and the septic tank. So I bought a book on how to make curtains, and I went to factory shops in England and I bought very, very beautiful fabrics in those factory shops, and came back and just step by step worked through the book. So that first year was spent constantly making curtains, but I got into quite a routine with it. I'd get up in the morning and start, then we'd all meet for lunch, and I'd carry on with the curtains. Every afternoon Daddy would come with a cup of tea and some cake for all of us, and all of our jobs would stop. Mummy was starting the vegetable garden, and really that was an uphill struggle for her. There was nothing there. It was a field, and my mother painstakingly started to put that garden into place. My father was doing works around the house, clearing rooms that we were going to start working on, but also, most importantly, he was making paintings for the chateau. And Nick was working from home as a software designer, and we learnt a lot that first year. We especially learnt a lot that first winter, when it got to -10 in the downstairs kitchen corridor. There was ice inside my windows when I woke up in the morning, and if I put a glass of water next to my bed, it had ice on the surface when I tried to drink it in the morning. It was absolutely horrendous, but there was something fun about it all as well. It was an adventure that we were all in together, and this journey that we were on, and I never for one moment thought that we'd made the wrong decision. And neither did my father, though the same can't be said for Mummy or Nick, who I think many times were just thinking, what have we done? And if they were thinking it then, they were thinking it a lot more once the actual building work started, because things got an awful lot worse before they got better. After our preparatory year, we started with gusto. We started knocking down the walls. As soon as those internal walls were down, a process which absolutely filled my mother with horror, because there was just dust everywhere. We then had to tackle the external walls on the ground floor, because they were completely clad in asbestos, and that was obviously very difficult to remove, and it had to be taken by a special convoy and signed for. And once the asbestos was gone, of course we lost all of the decorative finishes on the ground floor. Luckily there was no asbestos on the first floor, which is why we still have the beautiful original vintage wallpapers there. And we lost all of our floors, because when we were taking the walls down, we ended up with 3 different types of flooring in each of those rooms, which didn't match in any way. So all of the flooring had to come up. And then we realized, well, if the flooring's come up, we may as well take the opportunity to put down underfloor heating. So that meant that the digger had to come in to start digging down to make more space for the new flooring and for the underfloor heating. And I think it's fair to say that that was probably the low point of the renovations. I can't describe the dust that we were living with. It didn't matter how many dust sheets we put up. It just got everywhere. Mummy was really low. Daddy and I were super cheerful. Every time a wall came down, we'd be there cheering, so happy to see the change in the light and immediately imagining the room finished. But for Nick and Mummy, it was just, oh my goodness, what if it always looks like this? What if we never managed to fix this? What have we done? It was a very dark time for them. Asbestos was not our only problem. The billiard room was covered in dry rot, which was a real shame because it had a lovely panelling and a lovely floor, but everything needed to go. All of the floor came up, many of the joists had been affected as well, and we had to just pile it up and burn it. All of the chateau's electricity when we moved in was run on the system of old porcelain fuses, which we couldn't replace. So as one went and that area of the chateau was cut off, it was a sort of, oh well, we don't have any electricity in the Grand Salon anymore. And bit by bit, as a fuse went, that was it, no more electricity in that area. And of course we had to redo all of the electrics in the chateau, and I don't know how the electricians did it. It was like a huge puzzle for them. Kilometers of wiring were used to try to get electricity to every corner of this chateau. And don't get me started on the plumbing. We had, I think, 4 bathrooms when we moved in, which actually for a chateau isn't bad, but we knew that we wanted a bathroom for almost every bedroom, and trying to work out where they would go was a bit of a challenge. Also, the ones that we did have were often very peculiar. For example, in the chambres, just at the end of the beds, the wall went diagonally to halfway across the window. So there was just half the window in the bedroom and half the window in a little loo. So in this room, we took that diagonal bit of wall down, of course, therefore losing the wallpaper, meaning that we did have to redecorate that room. We straightened the wall and put a door so that we could get into that little corridor and make a small shower room there. On the other side of that room, there was a big cupboard built into the thickness of the wall, and we realised that in the room next door, just on the other side of it, there was another cupboard built into the thickness of the wall. So by walling off the cupboard in the chambres, we could break down the division between the 2 cupboards and actually create enough space to make a tiny ensuite shower room for the room next door, which was the chambre de Roger. The chambre de Roger is another room where we had to take down a wall because it had been split into 2 small rooms, and we took down the central dividing wall and then made the ensuite bathroom as well. In all of the bathrooms which we were lucky enough to have already, we had to do a lot of work because there hadn't really been much thought given to their decoration, though the baths were incredible. They were all old cast iron baths, some from the 19th century, some extraordinary Art Deco ones, all fantastic. Although these pictures all look very bleak, it was an incredibly happy time at Lalande. I think that we were all moving towards this common purpose. We were in a beautiful, beautiful place, and even if the house looked a mess, the nature at Lalande has always been wonderful. When you step outside, you hear bird song. It's just beautiful and calming and restful, and I knew that we were doing the right thing. At the end of all of those major works, we decided to have a party to celebrate the fact that we'd come so far. And yes, we hadn't started on the decoration, but we had flooring downstairs, and we had working plumbing, we had loos, we had electricity, and we could start on the fun part of the journey. And we decided to celebrate that by having our first ball, and it was a masked ball. It marked a really high point when we felt that everything was coming together beautifully, and I'm glad glad that that night I didn't know what was going to happen the following year, which is that my father got very sick. He needed a mitral valve replacement, which these days is often quite a routine operation, but everything that could go wrong did go wrong. He had open heart surgery 3 times in a week, I think, after that, to try to fix all of the things that had gone wrong during the surgery, and he survived for another year. I won't go into everything, but it was a very, very difficult year, and eventually he died after being in a coma for several months in Tours. It's hard to talk about the years straight after my father's death because they were very difficult. I'd lost this person who was my safety net and whom I adored and who created beautiful art every day that I felt was just constantly moving things forward, and who also shared the same optimism as me about the future of Lalande. And my mother, who had always been quite a realist and not that happy about the state of the chateau with all of the work that we'd been doing and all of the dust and the mess, she found it even harder to deal with after Daddy's death because, of course, she was very low because she'd lost my father, whom she'd been with since she was 20. So it was a hard time. Nicholas went back to England. He had to work back in London. Mummy went back to Suffolk to be in Framlingham. And so for a while I was here alone. I split up with my long-term boyfriend whom I'd been with for 10 years, Michael Potts, and we were still the best of friends, and we're still the best of friends now. But he was in Amsterdam, so there was a moment here when I was left holding the chateau. The restoration fund had been spent on all of the major works, and that was fine because we always knew that we had the money to do those things and no more, but it meant that progress came to a bit of a halt, and I was just here making curtains. I just get on with it bit by bit, and whenever money came in, then I would spend it on another bit of decoration. I was fine at the time, but looking back, I realised that I was quite lonely, and I can't quite believe that I did that and that I spent so much time here by myself. One thing I'm quite proud of is that I was never frightened. Even though I was alone in a huge chateau, I was never frightened, which is good. I really felt always that there's something wonderfully friendly and welcoming about this home, and whenever I was going through difficult times in my life like that, I felt that the chateau was protecting me and looking after me, and that we were in it together, that Lalande wanted me here as much as I wanted to be here, and that's something that's kept me going a lot. But then things started to get better because I discovered volunteers. I didn't originally ask for volunteers to come to have help doing things around the chateau. I asked volunteers to come so that I wasn't alone at the chateau, and they brought a lot of laughter with them. I had friends that came and moved in, and so I wasn't alone anymore. There were always people here, and we always had a shared vision, and everything started to move quickly after that. These are just some of the renovations that we've completed so far. Chambre Rose has got its new ensuite and is finally re-wallpapered in a lovely coal and sun wallpaper. In Bonne Maman, I taught myself how to make fabric-covered walls and swathed the room in yellow silk. And the bathroom went from this to this. Chambre de la Tour was maybe one of our most spectacular transformations. Michael Petherick painted beautiful faux panelling and we transformed it to this. Chambre Perse kept its original wallpaper and I made huge curtains to go with it. And the bathroom, I think, is a big improvement. The Chambre de Roger had the interim wall knocked down and is now a very romantic room with a lit à la polonaise. Here's one of the little upstairs attic rooms, which is now a toile de jouy bedroom, and the attic tower has become an adorable bathroom. For years I lived in my bedroom looking like this, but now finally I have oyster-coloured silk on the walls and this is my new bed. And the tiny room that was adjoining my bedroom has become my bathroom. Maybe the biggest transformation is the kitchen. We lived in it looking like this for months and months, but now it's the hub of the home where we spend all of our time. The Grand Salon had all of its walls taken down and is finally a comfortable room to sit in. And the billiard room survived having all of the woodwork ripped out because of dry rot and is now the room where we love to spend Christmas. The dining room went from being 3 small storage rooms to one of my favourite rooms in the house because of the lovely rich red chinoiserie wallpaper. And now when we look down the enfilade, this is what we see. And whilst I was getting on with the house, Mummy has been painstakingly transforming the potager and the greenhouse. And let's not forget the courtyard, because after my father's death we installed a fountain that he'd bought for the courtyard, and whilst there's a long way to go, things are really starting to take shape here at Lalande. Mummy met Percy and he brought such happiness into her life that she found renewed love in everything, and certainly a renewed love in the chateau too. Nick married the lovely Marie and they come here regularly with their amazing son Antoine, and when they're here they now live in the old gardener's cottage. And Michael Potts, my ex-boyfriend who had always wanted to be part of the chateau, finally bought into it, and so everybody who'd loved it from the start came back to it, and I feel that Lalande was just waiting to welcome them with open arms. As is often the case in life, the minute one good thing happens, lots of good things start to happen. It's as though there's a slight change in the universe and things start to go better, and that's very much what happened. And one day on the volunteer website, which is called Workaway, I got an email from people saying, hello, we're actually not looking to volunteer, but we are looking for any English owners of French chateaus because we're going to be making a new show in England about the renovation of chateaus. So I gave them a ring and said, yes, I have a chateau, I'm English, so I'd be interested in being on the show. And from the moment we filmed Escape to the Chateau DIY, everything changed, because we went from being a chateau lost in the middle of France that no one knew anything about, to suddenly millions of people in England seeing us and wanting to come for the bed and breakfast. And with each season that we appeared in, more and more people were visiting us. But the biggest change of all is that appearing on the TV show and it going well and it not being too embarrassing gave me the strength to do something that I've been thinking about for quite a long time, which was to start a little vlog about daily life here. And I was already on Instagram, so I saw that IGTV was launched, and I thought, well, I could just put little 5-minute sections of life at the chateau on IGTV. I wanted to do it as a memory of our life here, as a diary. That's why I called it the Chateau Diaries. It was really meant to be my diary that I could look back on when I was old. But also I thought that it could help us with advertising for the bed and breakfast. So these two things would come together perfectly. And I started making little videos, and everyone I knew enjoyed them. All of my family were watching them. But as I was making them more and more and more, Mummy started to get quite annoyed, because she was annoyed that sometimes it could take me up to 12 hours to edit a video, and it wasn't as though that was going to be bringing us any money. So she always felt that it was perhaps a little frivolous of me to be making these vlogs when there was so much that I needed to be getting on with in the house. And I can't describe why I was so obsessive about making them. I think it's just been a huge creative outlet for me, that as everything's been changing around us in the chateau, I found this urge to document. And the only thing I can relate it to is my father's urge to paint. My father, once he retired, would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, start painting, stop for lunch, paint all afternoon, stop for dinner. And he couldn't not do that. His creativity was completely innate. It was not a means to an end. He did not want to sell his paintings. He did it because he couldn't not do it. And I think I feel exactly the same way with my vlog. I put that first vlog on my IGTV channel back in June 2018. So, well, 2 years ago this month, that's another milestone. And for nearly a year after that, I was still making videos in portrait mode and putting them on IGTV. And I'd met Michael Petherick, who many of you know from the channel Doing It Ourselves, and he kept saying to me, Stephanie, you should be filming in landscape mode and you need to start a YouTube channel. Until finally, he just got frustrated, and little known fact, Michael Petherick actually made the Chateau Diaries YouTube channel. He just said, Stephanie, I'm sick of it. I'm going to make your YouTube channel and you are going to put your videos on it. And that is how the Chateau Diaries was born on YouTube. I was eligible for monetization very early on, but I didn't switch it on because I just thought the adverts would disturb people, and I thought that the amount I would make from adverts would be so negligible that it wasn't really worth bothering my viewers, and I just didn't really think about it. And again, Michael Petherick was saying, Stephanie, would you please turn the monetization on your videos, because it could make a difference and you could make a little bit of money to do something around the chateau. And in October 2019, I turned monetization on, and I think the following month, I made about 250 euros, and I was speechless. It was far more than I'd expected. So I saw a future where my hobby could at least pay for itself. But I can't describe how quickly I went from thinking that it could pay for itself as a hobby to realizing that it could be something much, much more than that. It was just 2 months later. In December, Michael and I decided that we would make an Advent calendar vlog together. So we would make a little video every single day of Advent with ideas of things that you could do for Christmas and lots of crafts and recipes and decorations. I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of the year, and I especially love Christmas in a chateau. There is something magical about that, and I wanted to share that with everybody. And something about that vlog really drew in new viewers, and my viewing figures went through the roof, and I think by the end of December I'd made something like 3,000 euros, which was enough money to start restoration work on the chapel that we hadn't been able to start for years. And then I thought, wait, this could actually make a huge difference to this chateau. There is a chance that this vlog could fund more restoration on the chateau. At that point, several of my viewers contacted me saying, have you considered a Patreon page? Because we would love to sign up. And I didn't even know what Patreon was. I'd never heard of it. So I looked up Patreon and I opened that account in February of this year. And within 1 month, it had changed my life. Because in March, COVID hit, and this was going to be the first year that the chateau was going to break even with its bed and breakfast, and it was going to pay its own costs for the first time in the 15 years that we've been here. And just as I was celebrating that fact, after all of these bookings had come in, we realized that everything was going to be closed because of COVID, and there wouldn't actually be a bed and breakfast for most of the season. And I felt, right, if I can't run a bed and breakfast, which is my usual job, then I will spend all of lockdown throwing myself 100% into my YouTube channel. And I have spent a minimum of 50 hours a week just making videos. So I went from making 2 videos a week to making a minimum of 4. One of them only for my patrons over on Patreon, and at least 3 a week on YouTube. And in the course of those 3 months, our lives have changed completely. I've gone from being unbelievably amazed 3 months ago that I had such generous patrons that I was going to be able to focus 100% on vlogging during lockdown and not have to worry about not being able to pay the bills here, to having a Patreon account that's one of the top 1,000 in the world, which means that it is in the top 1% of Patreon accounts in the world, and having this incredible community behind me supporting Lalande and getting excited about all of the things that we're going to be doing here. My mother has ordered her new mower, so very soon it will be delivered and we will see her zipping around on a very powerful machine. The courtyard is about to be completely redone. The chapel restoration starts in August. The last stained glass window for the chapel should be delivered in July. And we already have all of the funds needed to start the first step in the restoration of the lake. And as my patrons know, there are many, many other targets that we've reached, because that's something that I discuss with them on a weekly basis. And we also plan together for new targets and new things that we want to happen here at the chateau. As lockdown is coming to an end, I find myself now a full-time vlogger. My hobby has become my job, which is surely the most anyone can hope for in life. And not only that, but my job is funding my greatest love of all, which is my passion for this chateau. But as is so often the case with sudden success, people just see the success and they don't see all of the work in the years leading up to that moment of success, which is why I've made this video to share with you that this isn't just, oh yay, this is really fun because this has happened really quickly and that's nice. No, it's so much more than that for us. It's years and years of work and love on this home suddenly blossoming into something wonderful. And I can't thank any of you enough for this transformation in our lives. And I'm so happy that I found this chateau 15 years ago and fell in love with it and never once gave up on it. It's been a real roller coaster, and the lows were crushingly low. And if I'd known what they were in advance, maybe I wouldn't have had the strength to leap into the unknown. If I'd known I wouldn't have had my father by my side for this, perhaps I wouldn't have had the courage to do it. But that just goes to show that you have to have courage in life. And instead of looking at all of the things that could go wrong, you need to look at all of the things that can go so right if you just commit to something and give it your all. My father may have never physically seen the decoration that we've achieved so far in this chateau, but it doesn't matter because he did see it finished. He was the same as me. He saw it finished every single day that he lived here. He was seeing the final vision all the time and he didn't take his eyes off that. And that's what's important. Every day he told me, you don't understand the success that you will have with this chateau, Steph. Yes, it looks a mess, but you have to see beyond that. And that's what he could always do. Whilst we were living here in those early years, freezing cold, covered in dust, wearing ski gear to eat, and then walking for miles through the night to the only working loo, carrying a torch because the electricity didn't work along the way. My father and I always remembered Oscar Wilde's quote, "We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars." So my advice to anyone who wants to follow their dreams is to look at the photos on this video and see that to love your dream, to really enjoy every step of the way, you have to enjoy the journey because every dream comes with massive hardships. But if you can see the funny side of them, if you can see the adventure in them, and if you can see your final goal all of the time, then whether you get there or not, you will have had a fantastic time every step of your life. So that was the story of Lalande so far, but things are changing very quickly now and you'll see a lot of changes here in the very near future. Everything that has happened to us recently is because of you, every single one of you who watches these videos. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, thank you to my patrons. You have made a dream come true here. Have a fantastic week and I'll see you in the Chateau Diaries on Tuesday. Bye from Lalande. A huge thank you to all of our patrons at Lalande who are making this vlog possible, especially our Marquise and Marquise of Lalande,
Alice Allen, Daniela Dan Banda, Danelle Banakovic, Jason and Valerie Best, Veronica Castillo, Sakura Dennis, Laura Demare, Dottie, Jackie Ellison, Anna Farmery, Caroline Förster, Brenda Gibbons, Brenda Harris, Anthony Hindmarsh, Laurel Keir, Jacqueline Holmes, Helen Jacobs, Yaderland, Jimmy Kemp, David and Summer Lalande, Shannon Maitland, Meredith, Nina Messick, Kathy Norrie, JC Ward, Maureen Palmer, Bettina Rojek, Barbara Schmelzer, Sven Schreiber, Patty Suhu, Sarah Thornton, Colleen Troyer, Tomislav Lahinish, Brandy Walton, Aaron Windish, Brian Woodward, David Young and Ludovico Zordinazzo.
And thank you to all of you